In relatively stunning news, GM yesterday said that they are going to be using Tesla Superchargers starting in 2024 and that they're going to build their cars with the North American Charging Standard port starting in 2025. But the big news is that they might actually be licensing full self-driving in the future. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. After yesterday's announcement, I did a quick hot take video on GM adapting Tesla's North American Charging Standard, or the Tesla Charger port, for their new cars starting in 2025 and getting access to the same number, 12,000, of Tesla Superchargers in North America starting in 2024. So it looks like pretty much the same deal that Ford did a couple of weeks ago, GM is jumping on board with. And this is pretty amazing news. But the even bigger news is that afterwards, when Mary Barra was talking to CNBC, she actually let drop that GM might be licensing Tesla's full self-driving in the future. So the first thing I want to do is play about a 1-minute clip from this CNBC interview. I think it's worth listening to how exactly Mary Barra talks about this and to listen to her talk about how they've raced ahead in the charging world by making this licensing agreement with Tesla, which makes it sound like they've done something amazing and they've saved all of this money and made everything happen faster. And what they've done effectively is they've just cheated because they've just jumped on the back of somebody else who already did all the work. Anyway, take a listen to this clip.
How do you share the cost or revenue of the charging network with Elon Musk, with Tesla? And does this mean that you might be partnering in the future? Because Elon Musk has tweeted just recently on the heels of the Ford announcement that he would be willing in the future to license other Tesla technology like full self-driving and autopilot.
Well, I think From a full self-driving perspective, General Motors has Cruise, and we're already operating level 4 autonomy in 3 cities, with 2 more being added. But of course, we're going to always look for ways to be more capital efficient. And this arrangement alone, this collaboration that we're doing, nearly doubles the amount of chargers that our GM customers will have access to. And frankly, we think we can save up to $400 million in the original $750 million that we allocated to this, because we've been able to do it faster and more effectively. And we're really looking for ways that we can be more capital efficient as we go forward. So
as you can hear, GM had allocated about $750 million, $750 million, and they said they think they can save $400 million of that allocated fund. And because they've managed to do this faster and better, it's like, well, basically they just outsourced this. But then again, what is GM at this point except for an outsourcing venture? I mean, that's basically what they do, is they just buy parts from everybody. They put it together and they put a GM badge on it. You could hear Jim Farley talking about this with Ford vehicles and how with the next gen electric vehicle, they're trying to more vertically integrate, but that requires a huge amount of work, a huge amount of new employees to write software, to understand how things work from the ground up in safety critical situations. So it's a very complicated and very expensive and very daring thing to do on Ford's part. My guess is that GM is moving much more slowly than that. They don't really talk about this, but they seem much more open to the idea of continuing to just buy parts from suppliers and wrap it all up in a little package, put their own branding on it, and sell it as a GM car. More on that in a minute, but first, you may have noticed that my travel plans have been a little bit crazy this summer. I've been all over the place for business purposes, for the YouTube channel, and also, of course, for personal reasons, to travel to visit my parents who are having health problems and everything. With all of that travel, with all the disruption, with sleeping in strange beds and being stressed out all of the time, what do I do to maintain my health? Well, of course, I drink AG1. AG1 is amazing, and actually they've just rebranded their website as drinkag1.com, so it's even easier to remember. And believe me, with all of this travel, these travel packets are lifesavers. All I have to do is pour a packet into any water bottle or even a glass of water, and I get 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, supports my gut health, supports my immune system, makes me feel good, makes me feel energized. It's fantastic, and I don't know how I'd be getting through this summer without it. And of course, it tastes amazing. It tastes sweet with a hint of pineapple, even though it has no added sugar in it, which is great for my low sugar diet. And of course, it's vegan and gluten-free, so whether your life is high stress like mine or you just want improved gut health, to feel more energetic, to recover more quickly from workouts, and just generally feel better in your life, you should definitely try AG1. And if you click my link in the description, you get 5 travel packets and a year's supply of vitamins D3 and K2. And of course, they're so confident in the product, it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. So what are you waiting for? You definitely need to try out AG1 today and see if you feel better too. Just click the link in the description, and after a couple of months, let me know how you feel. So thanks again to AG1, and now back to it. And within that world, I can see them calling it a big win to just not even have to deal with this and basically outsource their charging standard, the way that chargers are done, the chargers themselves, all of that stuff to a third party. I don't know if GM is even planning on writing the software for this at this point. They might actually call on Tesla or another third party to actually write the integration software between their GM vehicles and the Tesla Supercharger itself. So who knows exactly how they'll do this, but GM seems very, very comfortable with just continuing to be very, very spread out and allow everybody else to do their work for them, and then tout about how they're saving a bunch of money on this. So it's a little icky to even think about. It's like, oh, look how good of a job we've done by basically letting everybody else do the work for us. And it's like, okay, whatever. But anyway, so just when you listen to her talk about how they've saved all this money, they haven't saved the money. What they've done is they've jumped on the back of Tesla's basically generosity. I know they're going to make some money out of this deal, but the amount of money they're going to make is not equivalent to if Tesla maintained a monopoly on their charging network, it would be really a stranglehold on the industry. Now, I know that Tesla doesn't want to do this because their mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, not to accelerate their own transition to sustainable energy. And so obviously part of their mission is to license this out. And yes, they will make some money at this, but it's not going to be a ridiculous amount. I believe it was Zach Kirkhorn who's talked before about how Tesla makes somewhere around 10% on their supercharger network. So, it's operating at a small profit, but it's a small profit, so it's not going to be huge. Now, on the other hand, if they eventually get a monopoly in the North American continent, then yeah, they actually will make a reasonable amount of money, because if you own all the gas stations, then even 10% profit is pretty good at that kind of scale. So, and they could eventually, of course, make more profit than that. So anyway, it's not completely an altruistic venture on Tesla's part, but it is partially altruistic, and it's very cool how they're doing it. But it's just interesting to hear Mary Barra talk about how amazing GM is at saving money and everything, when basically what they've done is they've just taken an offer that somebody else is like, hey, I'll do all the work for you, I'll take all of the risks, and then once it's actually operating and it's demonstrably way better than the other charging solutions, I will let you come in and utilize that as well. And yeah, you'll pay a licensing fee, but over time, I mean, how long is it going to take GM to end up having to pay the $400 or $500 million that it would have taken? And that's a huge underestimation. It would have taken them way more money than that to build out any kind of a network. So how long would it take them at a licensing fee of some amount of money, which they'll pass off onto the customer anyway, to have done that? So clearly it's a good move on GM's part. It must have taken a lot for Mary Barra and for GM to have eaten the crow that they have, because of course people have talked about, and they were in fact in the early 2000s in the lead in the EV race. They made the EV1, but then they just completely decided that it was too good of a car and they didn't want people to see it, and so they scrapped it and actually destroyed those vehicles. But anyway, regardless of how Mary Barra puts it, it is GM capitulating to the Tesla standard. It's a good thing overall, and it's going to be fantastic to see the better engineering solution win. In this case, it's the VHS Betamax situation all over again, but this time Betamax is actually going to win out over VHS, at least in North America. It would be lovely if that would happen in Europe as well, but I don't know. Europeans are very, very slow, and they already decided on the CCS standard, so they're kind of stuck with a dumber standard. I'm really, really happy for North America. I have a feeling that other car companies are going to get in line relatively quickly behind GM and Ford, because there's no way to compete with that. And that actually brings up a second point, which is that EVgo, Electrify America, ChargePoint, etc. are in really big trouble. They must be having emergency meetings right now going like, oh crap, what are we going to do? Because they've been cut out. People do not have good experiences with them. It's difficult to get the chargers to work. A lot of times they're broken. They tend to be slower often than the Tesla solution. So there's a lot of problems with those other solutions, and also they use the CCS type charge port. So between all of that, people are going to seek out Tesla Superchargers as they can, as they are able, and that of course will strangle the other charging solutions. They probably also ought to contact Tesla and they should say like, hey, yo, can we actually get the NACS standard for our charging solutions in the United States as well? If they were smart, they would do that. I don't know that they're not going to go out of business anyway, but at the very least, they should make an attempt to do that. I have a feeling that Tesla is going to become North America's gas station. They're going to just become a monopoly on that over time. And like I said, even at a 10% profit rate, if you have all of the gas stations and you're making 10%, that's still pretty good because you're making it up in volume. So they're going to do well on that front. All right, and that brings us to full self-driving and what Mary Barra said. So I'm going to replay just a little piece of this clip just so that you can hear it again.
Well, I think from a full self-driving perspective, General Motors has Cruise, and we're already operating level 4 autonomy in 3 cities, with 2 more being added. But, of course, we're going to always look for ways to be more capital efficient.
So first of all, it might be a little bit of a stretch to say that they're full level 4 in these cities at this point. I mean, they do have backup drivers and stuff, and they often have to use them. And I don't know that that counts as complete level 4, but whatever. That's just semantics at this point. But the interesting thing is that she said that they are open to other solutions and they want to be capitally efficient. Immediately after this, in this clip, she's going to talk about how they're saving $400 million by going with the Tesla Supercharger solution. And that implies that what she's talking about here is the Tesla Supercharger, but what she was just asked about was full self-driving. And so what I think that they're looking at is it's costing us billions of dollars and we're losing money on doing the full self-driving solution ourselves. It's not working that great. We've only got it in a few cities. It hasn't made any money at all for them. Whereas Tesla is operating at least at break even, something like that. It just depends on how you roll the R&D costs in versus the licensing fees that they're charging. And I know the take rate is not that huge on full self-driving, and it could go down in the future as the cost of the cars comes down. Did a video on that yesterday, so you should definitely check that out if you haven't seen that. But Tesla is at least operating at somewhat of a break even with that technology at this point. And if and when they get it to regulatory approval, even if it's just partial, it would behoove GM and Ford and other companies to be capitally efficient and use Tesla's full self-driving solution, because the scalability, no matter whether you're counted as level 4 or not, for whatever, I can't remember, it's like Scottsdale and San Francisco and maybe Austin at this point. Anyway, they have it in several cities, but that's just a few cities, and it's very, very geofenced, and it's not even all of those cities. And Tesla's solution is a general one. It drives, I'm at my parents' house. It drove us from Charleston, actually where we were, and then down to Savannah and back to my parents' house. It's going to drive us home in a few days back to Georgia. So it is a general solution. It works everywhere in the United States and Canada at this point. And yeah, it's not perfect. It's still a beta, but it's going to get there. It drives amazingly well at this point. And it would be just foolish of these other companies not to utilize Tesla's full self-driving. Elon Musk has said that he is willing to license this technology to other companies. Tesla will make money out of this. It'll be great. These other companies will have to eat crow and basically admit that they don't know what they're doing and that they barked up the wrong tree. But they've already started down that path with the charging solutions. So they're already well on their way towards that. And that basically has, sort of lubricated the situation here so that it will be relatively easy for them also to glom on to Tesla's technology. The interesting thing to me is going to be when they get to 2025, both Ford and GM, and they get to the point where they switch over to the NACS standard and they've got their next generation electric vehicles out and everything. Are they also at that point going to put in Tesla's hardware into the cars? Even if it's an option, even if it's not standard, even if they build it in as like a $5,000 option for the consumer, pay Tesla like $3,500, something like that. If they pay them that kind of thing, these are just speculation on prices. But even if they say, here's a car that's a $40,000 car, if you want to pay $5,000 extra, we'll put in the hardware. And there you have access eventually to full self-driving technology. That will be really interesting to see if they do that at the 2025 point. I would not at all be surprised because that's when they're changing over all of this technology anyway. Why not go ahead and build it into the next generation vehicles for both of them? Again, I think that Ford is likely to be the company that would announce this first. I don't know that either of them or any other company, because remember, I think that Kia, Hyundai, although they do have high voltage architecture, which makes everything a little more complicated, but Tesla's also releasing V4 Superchargers. So anyway, there's a lot of that, but VW, Toyota, on and on and on. These other companies, I think, are going to start announcing that they're going to use NACS in the United States. I certainly think that Lucid and Rivian will do that because they produce relatively few cars at this point, and it would be silly for them not to go ahead and make that change. That would be a big advantage to both of those companies. But as they start to make this change, as long as they're making a hardware change, why not throw in the cameras and Tesla's hardware board and all of that kind of stuff at the same time? Seems like that would be a logical time to do this, but they probably are not going to want to announce that until right before they release those vehicles because, again, Osborne effect, if anybody's paying attention, like if I was just about to go out and buy a Mach-E, honestly, if I was about to go out and buy a Mach-E right now, I might seriously consider waiting until 2025 or until the 2025 models come out with the different charging ports just to make things easier. So they're taking a risk on Osborne affecting themselves already with the charge port thing, which I'm sure is why they're saying they're retrofitting an adapter, but that's going to be a big kludgy thing because the CCS is really big, and then it's going to have to attach to this, and then it's going to have to go to an NACS adapter. It's going to be gross. And of course, that's why I'm sure both Ford and GM have been very specific about the fact that they're going to build adapters. I don't know if they're going to give it to current EV customers or charge them some sort of a nominal fee or something like that, but basically so they can attach the NACS to the CCS charge ports that they have on their current vehicles. They've been very careful about that because they don't want to Osborne affect themselves. Full self-driving, even much more than that. They certainly don't want to do that. So my kind of guess would be that they've already begun talks with Tesla. Perhaps they've done more than just talks and they're actually implementing it in their designs. They just don't want to say anything about it. So I at least would assume that they're going to be waiting for a good long while before they announce full self-driving, and they probably will wait until just before those models are announced and they have to talk about what's on them, and then they will talk about having full self-driving. But I would not be at all surprised if they don't add that in the 2025 models, or at least very soon after that. All right, so those are my thoughts on Mary Barra and what she's saying and what she's implying. I think it's pretty amazing that GM has fallen in line behind Tesla's charging thing. Again, it's an open standard now. It's North American charging standard. So it isn't Tesla's anymore, but they are still working with Tesla to implement all of this stuff. I also think it's even more amazing to hear her drop hints that they are open to full self-driving technology and licensing it from Tesla. In my mind, that means they probably already have made that decision. They just don't want to talk about it at this point. And hopefully they're well involved in putting that into their vehicles. Hopefully Ford is also doing the same thing at this point. And I expect that over the summer, we will see other automobile manufacturers, perhaps on Spaces, perhaps just making an announcement, but that they will fall in line as well and announce that starting around 2025 or so, that they will be putting the North American charging standard in on their vehicles in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So this is all to the good. I'm so happy that the better charging standard is winning, and I'm also really happy to hear hints, at least, that these other companies might license full self-driving. That will be amazing for Tesla and for these other car companies and for all of us, quite frankly, because it is safer. So that's ultimately who wins, is the consumer. We end up with safer roads. We end up without as many injuries, without as many deaths, and that's just amazing stuff. Anyway, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and while you're down there, please do like the video so other people can find it, and of course consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my Patreon patrons, my YouTube channel members, and of course my Twitter subscribers. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel in any way that you can. I truly appreciate it. And finally, once again, a big thank you to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Definitely check out the link in the description. Start feeling better tomorrow. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.